Hey guys, it's Tim Miller from the Bulwark. Trouble in MAGA paradise as Donald Trump and Joe Rogan are in the middle of a feud. Let's talk about why this actually matters and back up and get you up to speed if you blessedly are not aware of what's happening in this little tete-a-tete between Trump and Rogan. So Rogan on his podcast, the highest ranked, I still believe, the highest rated podcast in the world, that we're nipping on his heels, was discussing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Let's just play the clip of Rogan talking about RFK Jr.
Just what they do. That's politics. They do it on the left. They do it on the right. They gaslight you. They manipulate you. They promote narratives. And the only one who's not doing that is Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
You a fan?
Yeah, I am a fan. Yeah, he's the only one that makes sense to me. He's the only one that he doesn't attack people. He attacks actions and ideas, but he's much more reasonable and intelligent. I mean, the guy was an environmental attorney and cleaned up the East River. I mean, he's a legitimate guy. You know, before anybody started calling him an anti-vaxxer, which I thought he was too. I thought he was this nut, this like conspiracy theorist nut, until I read his book. I read The Real Anthony Fauci, and I'm like, what is it? How much of this is real? Because if it's all real, this is fucking insane. And we live in a world where we're being manipulated by these health organizations that are being paid by the pharmaceutical drug interests. And these pharmaceutical drug companies are pumping these products out into the population and telling us that we need them and then making insane amounts of money. And then also the government is in on it, and also they share a patent with Moderna, and also they share profits, and there's $700 million, however much money was made, whatever the number is that these guys made off of these products. Like, this is, all of it is fucking crazy. There's the revolving door between the CDC and the FDA and then these pharmaceutical drug companies. So the people that make the regulations then go on to have these cushy jobs with the pharmaceutical drug corporations. Like, oh, nothing to see here. It's like, it's open. It's right out in the open.
Right.
And when he talks about all that stuff in his book, you're just like, what the fuck, man? If this wasn't true, he would be sued.
Yeah,
but it seems to be true.
Yeah,
and it's a scary thing because people don't want to talk about it because they don't want to be attacked. You know, they don't want to be called an anti-vaxxer. That's a big one.
Right.
You know.
All right. So for anybody that watched the video that me and Sam Stein did breaking down the insane story that RFK Jr. says about how he found a dead bear cub and tried to skin it and then left it in Central Park and tried to frame a bike accident, just go watch the whole video if that doesn't make sense to you. It's crazy. Obviously, Rogan's compliments of RFK as a dignified person with integrity, needless to say, I don't agree with that. But here's the key part of that exchange. You hear him say, RFK, of the candidates, is the only one that is not gaslighting or manipulating. The only one that makes sense to me. I am a fan. So, to any sensible person out there, to anybody with listening comprehension, it seems to be that that's an endorsement, right? And only one that makes sense to me. Why would you vote for somebody that doesn't make sense to you? You're a fan. Like, that's an endorsement. Trump, Harris, RFK, like, those are the options. You, Rogan, have now said you're for RFK. Now, this is pretty important because RFK is siphoning off some votes for Donald Trump. If you look at the data, right now, among the RFK voters, a larger percentage, identify more as center-right or more Republican than do as center-left or more Democrat, or far-left or far-right, for that matter. So, his voters, right, are people that Donald Trump needs. And so that is why Donald Trump lashed out at him. He sends this bleat saying that he hopes Joe Rogan gets booed at a UFC fight the next time he goes. Not exactly having your eye on the prize here, I guess I should just say as a quick aside. Not really message discipline. When you're trying to run a campaign, you usually don't want to distract from your core message with things like, I think people should boo a podcast host I don't like, I'm in a feud with. The old Donald, in the 90s in the tabloids, like, that's how he got attention, right? So I get why that's his instinct, but maybe that was good for getting tabloid attention, but I don't know how helpful it is for, like, winning over swing voters or convincing people that you still have your faculties or that, you're focused on their concerns when you're beefing with a podcaster. So anyway, Trump wants Rogan to get booed. Here's where it gets delicious. Rogan knows that a big part of his listenership, this is why we're nipping at his heels, a big part of his listenership is MAGA. And so what does he do? Big tough guy, MMA guy, Joe Rogan, straight shooter, always telling you what he really thinks, right? Like, this guy isn't going to back down from that soft-handed orange vulgarian down there in Mar-a-Lago, with his fat body on his golf cart. Yeah, well, turns out he does. Joe Rogan, for the record, this isn't an endorsement. The only one that makes sense to me isn't an endorsement. Okay. He goes on. This is me saying that I like RFK Jr. as a person and I appreciate the way he discusses things. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, he goes on he compliments Trump because you got to suck up to daddy. And then he goes on and he says, I'm not the guy to get political information from. If you want that from a comic, go to Comic Dave Smith. He actually knows what he's talking about. You have a podcast where you give your opinion on politics. Sorry, dude. You don't get a get out of jail free card on the most important political question facing us. Who should be the next president? Because your opinion is inconvenient for your listeners. All right. You don't get to just say, I'm going to take a pass on that one. I give my opinion on everything all day long, all the time. It's what I do. It's my job, actually, to give people my real views on what's going on. Sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes he's learning. So sure, you can grow and change your mind. But to be like, yeah, if you want real politics, go to Comic Dave Smith. Who is Comic Dave Smith? Like this random other guy. It's so cowardly. It's such a cop-out and a wuss-out. And Joe Rogan is so cowardly for doing it. And he knows what he's doing. And it's okay. Like, look, Joe, if you just don't want to talk about politics anymore, if it's getting a little too hot in the kitchen, you just want a podcast about MMA and vaccine conspiracies and aliens or whatever else you podcast about, that's fine. Okay, do that. But you can't have a podcast that engages in political dialogue and then say, well, no, you can't look to me for my opinion. Why would you want my opinion? Anyway, it's an interesting little tiff. It's one of those tiffs that's not really good for either of them, which is why you see Rogan trying to back down. But it's worth monitoring because RFK, I think, when Biden was still in the race, was a big problem for Biden because there were a lot of Democratic voters that weren't happy with Biden that were parking their vote with RFK. Now that Kamala's in, you've seen almost all of those voters already move to Kamala. That explains her rise in the polls, basically. And so now RFK being in the race is a problem for Trump. And so watching how all these bros navigate that, that's something we're going to be doing here at the Bulwark. So subscribe to the feed, and we'll talk to you soon. Hey, if you like this video and our content, I'd love for you to become a Bulwark Plus subscriber. You get access to bonus podcasts, secret podcasts, and newsletters we put out every day, plus some behind-the-scenes takes that I don't always post on this feed. In addition, you can become part of the Bulwark community. Come over to our Substack and comment and meet other like-minded people. We'd love to have you. Starting today, you can get a free trial at thebulwark.com/free trial. The link is right here on the screen and below in the description. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Come on and give it a free try today.